There's one article that really stood out to me, and it was posted in Mediaite. And it's basically about a right wing radio host who's admitted that conservative media has created a generation of conservatives that are immune to facts. Now, this is from talk radio host Charlie Sykes. And he had recently admitted in an interview with Business Insider's Oliver Darcy that conservative media had, quote, created a monster in successfully making an entire segment of conservative voters immune to both facts and reason and fact checking. So basically, yeah, he's kind of given up the game. We already kind of knew this was going on, but to see them actually admit it, well, that's something else. Now, I want to read from you this excerpt from an interview with Darcy posted on Twitter on Sunday. Sykes says this, quote, "We basically eliminated any of the referees, the gatekeepers. There's nobody. Let's say that Donald Trump basically makes whatever you want to say, whatever claim he wants to make. And everyone knows it's a falsehood. The big question to my audience is, it is impossible for me to say that. By the way, you know it's false." And they'll say, "Why?" "I saw it on Alan B. West." Or they'll say, "I saw it on a Facebook page." And I'll say, "The New York Times did a fact check." And they say, "Oh, that's the New York Times." That's bullshit. There's nobody. You can't go to anybody and say, "Look, here are the facts," and I have to say that's one of the disorienting realities of this political year. You can be in this alternative media reality and there's no way to break through it. And I swim upstream because if I don't say these things from some of these websites, then suddenly I have sold out. Then they'll ask what's wrong with me for not repeating these stories that I know not to be true. Well, that right there is incredibly powerful. Repeating these stories, a lot of these stories from, for example, Alan West and Drudge Report and Breitbart, a lot of it is just bullshit, made up shit. Bullshit lies. But this guy says, since I work in conservative media, I've got to parrot this for my audience, or else they think that I've sold out to the liberal media. Because, well, let me get to why, right? Now, he says, when this is all over, we have to go back. There's got to be a reckoning on all this. We've created this monster. And look, I'm a conservative talk show host. All conservative hosts have basically established their brand as being contrasted to the mainstream media. So we have spent 20 years demonizing the liberal mainstream media. Exactly. So when you say the New York Times, they're liberal. They're so liberal, they're out of touch. They don't report on any facts. You can't go back and say, actually, they did a fact check on what Donald Trump said about, for example, Khizr Khan, right, being a member of the Muslim Brotherhood or some bullshit. He can't come back and say they did a fact check. Turns out that that's absolutely wrong. Khizr Khan was not a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, and it's not Obama's fault that he died in the first place, that his son died in the first place, Captain Humayun Khan. They can't come back and say that because there's a dozen Facebook posts. There's posts from Alan West, as they point out, from Drudge, Breitbart, all saying, yes, exactly, it was Obama's fault. And if you don't come out and back that up, then they say, well, you've sold out. You're a liberal. You're not a real conservative. And that's the problem that they have. And that's why he says, we created this monster. We told people not to trust any media other than our own. And unfortunately, what we put out is pure propaganda that's not based on actual facts or conservative principles. So now we're stuck. Because we're stuck with a candidate that a lot of Republicans, especially the Republican establishment, doesn't actually like. And when they say, actually, what Donald Trump says is pretty bad, now they're all getting labeled as, we can't trust you anymore because you've sold out to the liberal machine. Sounds kind of familiar of what's going on here on the left, but I'll get to that in a minute. Now, he continues. By the way, a lot of it has been justifiable. The demonization of the liberal mainstream media. He says there is a real bias. I would say it's more of an establishment bias, for sure. And the establishment is, of course, in favor of tax cuts for large corporations, which have to make up most of the media. as well as deregulation of industry. Basically, companies who control the media. For example, GE, which owned a huge stake in different media. But anyway, he continues, at a certain point you wake up and you realize you have destroyed the credibility of any credible outlet out there. And I am feeling, to a certain extent, that we are reaping the whirlwind at that. And I have to look at the mirror and ask myself, to what extent did I contribute? I'll be honest. The bias of the mainstream media has been the staple for every conservative talk show host, every conservative pundit, for as long as I can remember, going way back into the 1960s with William F. Buckley Jr. So that is an excerpt of this interview. And to be honest, I can't wait for the whole thing to come out, because I'm really looking forward to reading that. But basically, this guy has just admitted it. He's given up the game. He says that, look, for 20 years, or for even more than 20 years, we've convinced our listeners not to listen to facts based on who's actually reporting them. And if a liberal, so-called liberal outlet reports facts, then we must be counter to those facts, because it's the liberal media. We can't agree with them on anything. And basically, this is spread. Fox News, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, etc. In doing so, in opposing the so-called liberal media, these people, these commentators, have orchestrated a war against facts. And now that war is turned on them, they're realizing, oh shit, maybe that was a bad idea, guys. Bad idea. Well, no kidding. Look, and it's not just the right, as I mentioned. We're starting to see some of that on the left, too. We're not immune to our own biases here, especially like the Republicans. For example, when we rail against corporate media, who is, yes, admittedly, very pro-establishment, but also does some excellent reporting and good fact-checking. And some of them have more resources to be able to do that stuff than a lot of us in independent media. I certainly don't have a staff. It's just me. It's just me by myself, looking up whatever I can and trying to discern the facts from there. Look, what I'm saying is that we've got to be careful not to go the way of conservatives by making sure that we vet our facts, right? That we make sure that we're getting the right kind of information, the right kind of material, right? The stuff that actually represents reality, so that we can make decisions based on that reality. And to do so, we have to be able to discern between opinion and fact, bullshit and not bullshit, truth and lies. Even if those lies are things that we want to hear. Okay? So, like I said, we've got to hold all media, including new media, accountable. I want you guys to hold me accountable. If I say something that's not true, I want you to point out and say, no, actually, we've got the actual facts here. I want you guys to keep us in check. That's the whole purpose of having an audience and talking to the audience, is to say, look, you guys, you've got to keep me in check, okay? Sometimes I get things wrong. Sometimes we all get things wrong. That's why you've got to make sure that we've got things right, so we can report the truth, so we can report the facts, even if we disagree with them, and even if they don't fit our narrative. After all, we're supposed to be based on facts. We're liberals, we're supposed to be fact-based. So we've got to make sure not to fall into the trap that the conservatives fell in for the last, 4 or 5 decades. Hey everybody, if you like this video, then please like this video and share. And if you want to see more like this, then please hit that subscribe button below.